Good evening, and welcome to a special news feature. I'm Spencer Sterrett.
And I'm Stacy Lambert. Today, we would like to introduce you to Ernest Bai Koroma. Inaugurated in September 2007, Koroma is the president of Sierra Leone, a small West African country currently notorious for its 2014 outbreak of the Ebola virus. In Koroma's inauguration speech in 2007, he declared his zero-tolerance policy on corruption and vowed to stop the mismanagement of his country's resources. Sierra Leone had been gripped in a vicious civil war from 1991 to 2002. For a country with a population of only 6 million, the civil war was devastating. 50,000 people died, 100,000 civilians were mutilated, and roughly one-third of the country was displaced. Diamond smuggling was the country's biggest business, and many of the mines were unlicensed and unregulated. Officials were bribed to turn a blind eye to the poor treatment of workers and the sale of goods. The civil war ended in 2002, but corruption did not. In 2013, the managing director of the country's largest bank and several other high-ranking employees were charged with fraud. The chief medical officer was charged with misappropriating over $500,000 of grant money.
If the fight to end corruption was difficult before, it is especially difficult now. In May 2014, an Ebola epidemic erupted in Sierra Leone. A state of emergency was declared as deaths rose exponentially into the hundreds and then the thousands. 11,000 cases of the disease and more than 3,500 deaths were reported as Ebola raged across West Africa. With a fatality rate of 50%, Sierra Leone's infrastructure took a major hit. 12 nurses died as hospitals were overwhelmed with the infected. The borders to Guinea and Liberia were closed, and this stymied Sierra Leone's economy, which relied heavily on the trade of goods with neighboring countries. The Western world was quick to respond, however. Millions of dollars in emergency relief entered Sierra Leone, joining taxpayer dollars raised in the country itself.
Recent investigations have found that not all this money was used in the fight against Ebola. Roughly a third of the money allocated for the fight was unaccounted for in 2014. The Ministry of Health and Education failed to provide documentation for the purchase of 50 ambulances and the construction of a treatment center. An Al Jazeera report found that many of those who were quarantined did not receive proper supplies during their time in isolation. Some families had to rely on rations of rice for weeks, prompting a World Health Organization coordinator to say that the quarantined food distribution system is broken.
Disease control centers all across the world scrambled to join the fight against Ebola, but it has not been without